Sounds, camera, action with inspiring leaders. I'm your host Vineet, and today we are joined by Ms. Joanna, the principal at Wales International School and the author of the book Kind Leadership. She brings over 30 years of experience in the field of education, and today we'll explore more about her book Kind Leadership and the role that plays around UAE and the other countries around the world. Thank you so much for joining us today.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. So to start with, tell us more, how do you define kind leadership in your words?
I think for me, kind leadership is something that is incredibly misunderstood around the world, not just in schools. And I'm going to have to quote Al Capone to you, who said, "Don't mistake my kindness for weakness." And for me, kind leadership in schools is intentional, and it's about setting high expectations, but allowing people to meet that with humanity, which I think is where people make the mistake. They think it's just about being nice. They think it's just about not having difficult conversations, avoiding tough decisions, and that's not at all what it's about. And I think for me, the reason it's so important today, we can see what's going on in the world at the moment.
Exactly.
It's, schools are incredibly stressful places to work. There's a lot of emotional baggage that people carry with them, not just in leadership, teachers, parents, the students themselves. They're emotional places to work. And I say to people regularly in our school, schools are dynamic places. If everything's running smoothly with kindness in place in your leadership, then when something happens, that's a little bit of a blip. When you've got something happens in the world, maybe a child falls over and breaks their leg, maybe a teacher's going through a bereavement, that's a blip. But you can cope with that because everything else is running smoothly. So you can cope with the dynamic aspects of school if you've got kindness in place, and that's important to me.
Perfect. And I read about Chase framework that you have used in your book. What is the role of Chase, and what are its elements that leaders can use that in their leadership journey, and it can help them in the classrooms, in the school, with the staff, with the teachers around?
I'm still a teacher at heart, so I haven't been in the classroom for a long time because I'm a principal, but I am still a teacher, and I was trying to think about my ideas for kindness and what kindness means in school leadership. And I thought, just like the children, we need an acronym. And I was driving along not very far away from school near a petrol station one day, and I was thinking about all of these elements that I wanted to say, this is what kind leadership is, and this is how you can do kind leadership in schools. And I was thinking about, we all think about chasing happiness, and I thought, if you could chase happiness, you can chase kindness. And then I thought, hold on a minute, chase. So it's communication with humanity, with kindness and compassion. H is for honesty. A is accountability. S started as shame, but I'll tell you the story about that in a moment. And E is ego management. When I put it all together as a framework and sent it to the publisher, my wonderful publisher at Crown House, I have to give them a shout out here, said, "Oh, shame, I get it, but it's a bit negative. Can you flick it so that you're still talking about elements of shame, but something in a more positive way?" And we discussed it and came up with self-esteem. So it's communication, honesty, accountability, self-esteem, and ego management.
Wow, that's really good. So let's talk about compassionate and accountability. How we can include trust in that, and that can go hand in hand, and that can help teachers in the classroom. What do you have to say to the leaders when it comes to trust?
Trust is everything, and everything that goes through the Chase framework has an element of trust within there. You have to walk the walk and not just talk the talk, and your staff and the students and the parents, they're watching you all the time.
Sure.
And for me, if you're walking the walk and your values align with what you're doing within your school, so your words and your actions align together, then that for me will bring trust. And if people don't trust you, then your leadership's going to fall apart. Any decision that you make, anything that you're trying to put into place, if people don't trust you, it's going to fail. And if you think about the elements of the Chase framework, yes, they're separate, but they all work together. If you can frame everything in your leadership, your decisions, talking to staff through that framework, then it inevitably means that people trust you in your leadership.
what is the struggle that you face when you talk about kind leadership? There would be struggles, there would be drawbacks, there would be times when you say, like, I've been working on this kind leadership, but there would be somewhere you face differences or you face the struggle. How you manage that?
I think you have to put boundaries in place. Again, people don't understand what kindness is. You still have to have boundaries. You still have to be honest with people. In every workplace, you're going to have toxic people who work there. You need to tackle that. So some people might look at that and go, well, that's not really very kind. But actually, it's the kindest thing for everybody else to not have that in your organisation. And I think that's difficulty. And I was talking earlier about expectations.
True.
In the book, I've said expectations are resentments in the making. And the story that I've put in the book is, in every single aspect, in every single chapter, I've put something called the epic fail. And if you expect something in return for your kindness, you're going to be very bitterly disappointed, because that expectation is there and it's not going to be met. And the example that I gave was of a time when bonuses were given. My expectation was that there was going to be a great big, oh, thank you, Joanna, you're so wonderful, that's so kind. It wasn't my money, but my expectation was that my kindness would be met with gratitude. It wasn't, and that really taught me a lot about not expecting anything in return.
Share one of your experiences of your kind leadership that has changed school culture.
I think the biggest one that I can tell you about, and it hurt me as well, was we had an inspection that didn't go particularly well in the school. And in unkind leadership, that could turn into blame, shame,
100%.
finger pointing. It was that person's fault. It was this person said something in a meeting that must have gone wrong. Their exam results aren't good enough. But I looked at it and I thought the person I blamed the most was myself. And then looked at everybody and I thought, hold on a minute, I'm suffering, I'm feeling bad. And looked around and I could see everybody was feeling bad. They were feeling the shame. They were feeling not great about themselves. They'd lost their self-esteem. And I thought, as a kind leader, this has happened. There's absolutely nothing we can do about it. It's in black and white in a report. I can be unkind and go, right, I'm going to terminate this person's employment. I'm going to fire that person. This person needs to go. Or I can say, okay, it happened. Let's think about why it happened. What can we do to improve? With kindness, how can I support you to make sure that it doesn't happen again? And I think that built a lot of trust and a lot of respect, and we genuinely worked together, and it's not the same school.
I can feel the energies around your school is so positive, and I think it's, as a teacher, as a leader, it's very important for us to understand those energies, to understand where we need to work on as a leader, and that's so important. So I love this whole, the way you have, handle this whole situation of inspection and the way. And just one thing which I have noticed when I was walking towards your room, you have written open door policy. Can you explain more about it? And is it any link between open door policy and the book you have written, Kind Leadership?
Yeah, there's a huge link between the open door policy and the book Kind Leadership. I believe very firmly, as a kind leader, people need to be able to come and talk to you openly and have real, genuine professional dialogue. And I think that speaks to ego. I think the chapter on ego, if you don't manage your ego properly, then you can't handle people coming and criticising. I don't look at it as criticism. I look at it as trying to help the school grow. I don't get everything right. I make mistakes. If I make a mistake, somebody needs to tell me. And genuinely, I tell my staff and parents and students, any feedback is welcome in this school. And I have something that I call, a friend once said, I think it's a Turkish proverb, it's better to have 1,000 tiny conversations than one huge explosion. And I would rather have 1,000 tiny conversations to try and put things right. So every Wednesday, I sit in our reception and I do coffee morning. I sit there, whether anybody comes or not, for 1 hour. I sit with my laptop. I can work if nobody comes. But if a parent comes, they come, we have a cup of coffee, and they say, not really very happy about this at the moment. And I say, okay, tell me more. They tell me, and sometimes I'll say, sorry, there's nothing we can do about that. So the example that I can give you is, one week somebody came and said, you didn't allow my son to pray. And I said, no, we did allow your son to pray, but he chose to play football. He played football, he came back to the class, went, oh, I forgot to pray, can I go now? And we said, no, you're going to have to wait because we need to have supervised prayer time. And the mum went, I'm very sorry, I will speak to him when I go home. So it's not always saying, oh, yes, you're right. It's being honest. But sometimes people come and they've got a genuine concern. You know, the teacher hasn't posted something on Class Dojo for the last week and they're supposed to have homework. I can look and go, do you know what, you're right. Please accept my apologies. I'll speak to the teacher immediately. We'll rectify the situation. It's done. And it's the same with staff. And I reassure people, I genuinely don't hold a resentment. If somebody comes to me and says, I'm not really very happy that we've got a meeting on Monday night, we've got a parents' evening on Thursday, I'll go, I'm so sorry, we'd zapped that. We don't do parents' when we have a parents' evening, we don't have a staff meeting that week. So my mistake, I'll put that right. They walk out the door, I don't have a little black book in my drawer that I take out and go, this person came to me and said that. It's a genuine mistake and we put it right. And I think that's
human beings.
Exactly. But I know from speaking to other colleagues, that's not necessarily the experience in all schools.
And I agree with you. Well, we have worked in so many schools, I think we can say that. This leads to my next question. How do you handle difficult conversation?
With compassion and honesty. And I think something that people don't understand again about accountability, I did the COBIS conference, the Council of British International Schools conference last year, and actually I was sounding out my book, I have to be honest. I was sounding out my book because I didn't know if anybody would be interested. And before the conference session, they can ask questions, there's an app that they use and people could ask questions. The amount of people who said, how can you have accountability and be kind? Absolutely you can. And you still need to have difficult conversations. But the way that I do it is, it's not personal. It's not a reflection of that person. It's not about their personality. Exactly. It's about them not meeting expectations. Sometimes I have to, again, take a step back and go, was I clear on what my expectations were? So I can't have a difficult conversation with somebody and say, you didn't meet the expectations if I wasn't clear on what the expectations were. But if I was, and if I say the deadline for doing your reports was Wednesday, you didn't meet that deadline, that has repercussions on your colleagues because now you've damaged their mental health and well-being because they're behind, because they can't check their tutor group's comments, because you haven't done yours. You haven't met the expectation. Is there a reason why? And if there is, support. If there isn't, making clear that, this isn't good enough. But I'm not saying you are useless, you are a terrible person, you are not professional. It's not about you. It's about that situation and be very clear about that.
The deadlines that you mentioned, good. Reflection.
Absolutely.
I've read about reflection on your book. Tell us more about the role of reflection into all this for teachers, for leaders, even for students.
For everybody. And I've been very clear in the book. Nothing that I'm talking about is new. Nothing is going to revolutionise the world of education. We all know communication's important, honesty, accountability, building people's self-esteem, managing your ego. We all know that. But my question to people is about reflection. Are you actually doing it? Is my question. We all have things that we know, but we're not doing it. And at the end of every day, I promise you, this is my ego check. I sit at the end of the day and I reflect about the decisions that I've made, because we make a lot of decisions during the school day. And I think genuinely, ego check, Joanna, look in the mirror. Was it to do with your ego, or was it for the good of the school? And that's how I think people need to think constantly, is reflect on yourself and just be honest. You don't even need to tell anybody else. You can sit at home, reflect on how you've behaved during the day, anything that you're thinking about, that you're worrying about, just reflect. And if you've made a mistake, there's always a solution. There's always a solution. You can say sorry, you can move on, you can take a different path. Progress isn't linear. We've all seen that picture, it's not a straight line, it's like this. And I think we need to reflect honestly with ourselves. Like I say, you don't even need to tell anybody else. do you know what, I reflected on that and I did the wrong thing. Just put it right. But the most important thing for me was reflection, is be honest with yourself, and I tell that to our students as well.
But when it comes, as you said, as a leader, so let me ask you the next question about well-being. You know, what is the role of well-being that fit into all this? And your Chase framework, your book is talking a lot about positive ideas, the solutions, and what the leaders needs to do. Now, the new leaders who have no idea, you know, they're just in the room, they are still figuring out a lot of things. Sometimes they do have disagreement. So accountability, compassion, all these things these terms are totally new for them. Now we are, there are new terms as instructional leadership, distributive leadership. So many leaderships are coming and they're confused. What message would you like to give it to them from your book, and why it's so important for them to understand based on your kind leadership? What message would you like to give it to the new leaders?
I think well-being's at the heart of everything, and I would include in that your own well-being. And I've been very honest about the whole reason for me writing this book was that I've struggled with my mental health and well-being. I had it's coming up for 6 years ago, a really bad experience that really knocked my confidence in myself, and it could have gone either way. You know, I could have left the teaching profession, but instead we moved here. Best thing we ever did. You know, I really appreciate the opportunities that the UAE's given me. I also look at other people's well-being, and I think I would not want anybody to feel like I have felt in the lowest points in my teaching career. And I think we spend a lot of time with teachers talking about how to behave with children, which is very important. We talk about children's well-being, about how, don't have too much teacher talk. We need to make sure that, the children are engaged. We don't spend enough time thinking about the impact of that on teachers, and it always makes me giggle when we say, exactly,
100%.
Too much teacher talk. We don't want teacher talk, and then we make teachers sit in a room for an hour and listen, be talked at by leadership. And I think, just practice what you preach. So the well-being of the students is at the heart of everything that I do. But we also need to look at the well-being of our staff, and we need to understand what that is. And again, I think there's a lot of confusion. Being asked to do your job, like I was saying earlier, you're asked to plan your lessons, you're asked to teach your lessons, mark your books, write reports for the deadline. That's your job. Asking people to meet those deadlines is not damaging their mental health and well-being if you do it properly, and something that we've done at our school, and I have to credit our SLT, particularly my vice principal, for this. We do our calendar an entire academic year in advance. So we publish our calendar in August. So we say to our staff, we know when the report deadline is in December, we know when the report deadline is in March, we know when it is in June. Don't book a weekend away. Don't make sure that you're having a big event at those times. This is when parents' evening is. I'm telling you now, if you need to find childcare, it's going to be on this day. It will not budge unless something happens in the world, but it will not budge. So people know in advance, because people need to be prepared. And for me, that's looking after people's well-being. So if people come and they say, my well-being's not great because of this report deadline in June, I'm saying, well, you knew about that in August. So, okay, I'll help you and I'll support you.
But there would be boundaries
there are boundaries there as well. And I think if you're fair to people in terms of giving them what the expectation is, then you're looking after their well-being.
Exactly. When you were talking about the mental peace and stuff 6 years back, we just stated that. I remember I was doing the podcast with Miss Ilna Givers from Russell Kema. She mentioned one line that says, a leader can either make you or break you.
Absolutely.
So I can relate that so much with whatever you are saying. It so much depends on a leader, that journey as a teacher for you in the school, but it's vice versa. It should not be that we expect a leader to be kind towards us or listening to us. As a teacher, what are we doing? So it's false accountability. It's accountability. So I believe it's always from both the sides. It's not it's not a one side of a coin, it's from both the sides. So that's why I love this, whatever you have explained about the well-being. And I think as a school, not only a leader, it should be teachers, students, everyone is accountable.
It becomes the culture of the school.
Exactly.
And if you want to see the impact, I would say if you go on our school Instagram or Facebook, every Friday I do something called Picnic with the Principal, and we have a heritage room, and if the children have done something good, it doesn't have to be great work. It could be, you know, saying thank you, being a kind friend. They can be nominated to come for Picnic with the Principal, and we sit on the floor and they have some fruit or some juice, and I ask them the same things every week, and I say, you know, how long have you been in the school? What do you want to be when you leave school? Because I think it's important to give them aspirations.
Sure.
What's really good about the school and what can we do to improve? So then I'm getting the voice of the students as well in a kind of informal setting. And then Ruby, who works in our office doing media, does a video at the end of it. And it's really interesting because the Chase framework was introduced properly. I've been doing it informally, but it was introduced properly to our staff in August, September. In the last few months, it's been fascinating because Ruby does a video at the end of Picnic with the Principal saying, what do you love about the school? The amount of children who say, it's kind, everybody's kind, the teachers are kind, Miss Joanna's kind, and I've said to the children, so I talk in terms of kindness, even when we're talking, you know, it's a school. Children make mistakes. Sometimes they'll say what our children call bad words. You know, they'll say something horrible, so they used a bad word.
Kids, they're kids.
Or, you know, somebody hit them, or, you know, and I'll say to them, in this school we have kind words and we have kind hands. And the other week, and, you know, I hadn't said it for a while, and I think it was either before Ramadan started, one of the girls said, I love kind words, kind hands. And I thought, wow, that, you know, it's having an impact.
Wow, that's beautiful. And I think it's vibes, the energies, as I spoke about earlier. It's beautiful to know that the students and teachers feel the same way. So before we move on to the rapid fire, one last question. One last message would you like to give to our listeners? That message from your book, the message you want to convey to our listeners, or I should say the moral of the story we generally say about the book. So what do you want to say to our listeners?
I would say the moral of the story definitely throughout the book is please be kind to yourself, to your school community. And for me, if you can put the Chase framework into action in your school, I promise you it can make a difference. So if you really frame your leadership decisions and how you run your school in terms of Chase, communication, honesty, accountability, self-esteem and ego, it will make a difference. Be kind.